Logo, Government of Canada, Women and Gender Equality Canada. Captions, Vibrant Healthcare Alliance, Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense Sessions for women, girls, trans, two-spirit, non-binary, and other gender-marginalized individuals with disabilities who are 16 plus. Mission, building healthier communities using integrated services to empower individuals living with complex issues. This video was filmed during the COVID-19 pandemic, so participants were online. The instructor, her assistant, and Vibrant staff are fully vaccinated and operating under the guidance of federal and provincial COVID-19 guidelines. Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense, 45 plus years, 5,000 plus courses.
So welcome to Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense. My name's Deb Chard. I'm an instructor and senior trainer in Wen-Do. I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and what women and girls can expect if they are taking classes with us. You know, I do want to say that Vibrant Healthcare is, breaking all kinds of stereotypes, cutting edge work by partnering up with us in Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense to offer classes to women and girls who live with disability. I also want to acknowledge that the work I'm doing right here, right now, is cross-cultural work. I am not a woman who lives with a disability yet, and so I do see this as cross-cultural work. Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense is the longest running women's self-defense organization in Canada. In 1 year, in 2022, we are going to be marking our 50th, that's 50, our 50th anniversary. So for the last 5 decades, we have been offering small workshops, full 15-hour courses, to girls and women of all ages, from 10 years old and up, all abilities, women who use mobility devices, women who are blind, women who have different learning styles and abilities. The eldest woman to complete her 15-hour basic course was 93 years old. She was my student. You should have seen her. She did everything. She did all of the hits, all of the blocks, all of the wrist releases, the choke releases, the ground and bed self-defense, the weapons self-defense. Talk about breaking stereotypes, hey? That's what we're all about. We're breaking the stereotypes of who the world tells us that we're supposed to be as women and girls, and certainly who the world tells, what the world tells women who are living with disabilities. So we're going to be breaking down those ableist, sexist, sometimes racist, sometimes homophobic stereotypes that even if we haven't experienced personally, most of us would agree we live in a society where we are exposed to lots of that messaging. So we work from an understanding in Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense that our main job is to break down victim-blaming culture. And so while you and I might be talking about our what-if situations and our, strategies, both verbally and physically, that we might employ in uncomfortable or really dangerous situations, we want to be 100% clear. If anybody, whether it's a member of our family, whether it's a romantic partner, whether it's a complete stranger, is crossing that line with us, what we want to be really clear of, it's their fault, not ours. So we're going to do a little bit of talking with some of the women who have taken part in Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense. We're going to start doing that right now.
Title, Vibrant Healthcare Alliance, WIDAG, Take Back the Night. Caption, Vibrant Women with Disabilities Action Awareness Group in Toronto, WIDAG is a collective that provides peer support and mentoring to women, girls, trans, two-spirit, non-binary, and other gender-marginalized individuals with disabilities who are 16 plus.
I am so happy to see y'all again. Welcome back to Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense. I'm going to ask you to say what your name is, and I want you to cast your mind back to the first time you did a Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense workshop. What were you hoping to get, when you took that class? What brought you to Wen-Do? So Katie, hi, good to see you. May I ask you to start?
Hi, my name is Katie McMillan. I'm in the midst, I'm almost finished with my very first Wen-Do class. And I'm very happy to be taking part in it because I'm learning more about myself and what I'm capable to do, and specifically how I'm able to defend myself as a woman with a disability. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Well said. And we're so grateful that you've joined us again. Thank you for that. Hey, Robin. Hi.
Hi, so I'm Robin Simmons, and when I did Wen-Do, because I did Wen-Do many years ago, I wanted to do Wen-Do to empower myself and increase my independence. And one of the things that I really loved when I was doing definitely the techniques was getting to get in touch with my body and seeing how my body moves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And it's after all these years, hey? After all these years, it's just so good to see you again. Thank you. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Greco, and I'm so happy to be here. I am just at the end of my first Wen-Do class, and I have seen Wen-Do through Take Back the Night. I've seen participants do that, and through Wen-Do, I was really happy to learn techniques that I could use with my body, and also different ways that I could also use my voice to defend myself. And I've also learned a lot about myself going through this process. So I'm really happy that I did it.
Well said, Stephanie. Thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. This isn't just a physical experience, right, women? This is an emotional and a cognitive experience as well. We hope we never have to do this stuff, but we know we're worth fighting for. And what we want to focus on is, how does my body work right now? I don't have to change anything about myself, right? How does my body work right now? And we know that we live in a world that wants all women and all girls to believe that we are dependent on other people, even for non-disabled women. We are taught that we need to be dependent on other people. Just hearken back to Walt Disney and think about the princess when she's in danger, right? And what happens when the princess is in danger in many of the Walt Disney shows? Give me an example.
Steph lifts her hand.
Yes, Steph.
The prince has to come to her rescue.
Yes, right. And so we learned from the time we're toddlers, right, that if we're scared, we need a man to take care of us, preferably a prince, if at all possible. And then when you think about us as adult women and what we're shown by Hollywood and other production houses, we are being lied to. We are being told that we're not capable. And when a woman has a disability, that messaging is times 100. I had a 73-year-old woman in one of my classes in the High Park area here in Toronto who was on a 6-week program. She was what I would say willowy. She was about 5'8". I'm guessing she didn't weigh more than 110 pounds. I would say that while she wasn't living with a disability, she had a mobility issue. Right? She was coming home from Wen-Do halfway through her 6-week course, and she became aware of footsteps behind her. She did what lots of us would do. She crossed the road. So did he. She crossed again. So did he. He picked up his pace. He started coming closer and closer to her. He was making comments to her about her personal body parts, about what he was going to do to her. He was threatening to rape her. My student said she was so scared. She felt like she couldn't remember anything. She had forgotten the blocks and the hits and the kicks. She said she could only remember one thing. She said she turned around and faced this guy. She went into what we call fighting stance, and she yelled, "Back off!" And he said, "You back off too." And he ran away. Now, when she told me that story, she was really clear. Yeah. I knew that would surprise him, but she said, that isn't why I yelled. She said, I yelled because every single week
I had an instructor who said, I cannot guarantee you that your fist will always break the attacker's nose or break their collarbone. I can't guarantee you that the wrist releases we do will always work. But I will guarantee you and every woman who is watching this right now that if we yell, we will not freeze. So there is an element of surprise to our yell, but more importantly, the shot of adrenaline that is released in our bloodstream anytime we're afraid, anytime we've been shocked or scared, it can make us freeze if we hold our breath. But if we yell, well, that's a whole other story. It's like lighting a fire of power on the inside of us. So y'all are amazing yellers for sure.
Captions. This video is not meant to be used as a training tool or train the trainer module. The intended purpose of this video is for women, girls, trans, two-spirit, non-binary, and other gender-marginalized individuals with disabilities who are 16 plus to practice self-defense techniques and strategies. Wen-Do.ca.
We're going to take a look at some situations where, we are not able to use verbal self-defense effectively, where we're not able to avoid the situation, and where we need to do a physical technique in order to give ourselves time to get to safety. Using our body the way it is right now is an important thing to be keeping in mind. What kind of wheelchair do you use? If you use a power chair, well, it weighs probably over 300 pounds. And when you hit reverse or drive, rolling over somebody's instep can crush tiny joints and bones in their foot. If you have a manual wheelchair, are you able to lift the arm right out and use it as a weapon at hand? Now we're going to talk more about that, but what is important is for us just to remind each other that this is stuff we hope we never have to do. Let's say I'm isolated, let's say I broke up with this person a couple of months ago, and let's say they weren't taking it well. They were becoming more and more aggressive, and they were leaning down and into me. I have weak spots that might be presented to me. May I touch your arm? Yes. For example, the eyes are a target. If I gouge up through the attacker's eyes, it could do permanent damage to the attacker. The nose is a target, so is the collarbone as well. Let me give you an example of how we would break the attacker's nose. Ah! What I'm doing is starting with a straight hand.
Deb folds her fingers into a fist.
Fold, wrapping my thumb around the outside of my fist, using that fleshy pad.
Below the pinky finger.
Round and down. You may be asking right now, what if the attacker isn't leaning down? Well, then we'll talk about targets that are available. But remember, lots of dangerous situations happen when people are leaning into our face, kissing distance, invading our space. That's what we're talking about here. So here's what we did. We went fold, fold, wrap, squeeze all the air like you've got a wet washcloth. Bring your hands up in front of you if that's possible for you. Coming around and down.
Deb slams her fist down.
Take a big breath. We don't want to hold our breath. We want to the air out as if you're saying pizza. That's in order to get that diaphragm, the lower part of our lungs working so we don't freeze up. We're going to do 3 of those. We're going to yell on 3. You ready? 1.
Sitting in a chair, Deb slams her fist down. Her assistant stands next to her doing the same strike.
So let's take a look at a situation where perhaps I'm sitting or I'm reclining. This person is right down in my face, gouging up through the attacker's eyes is also a possibility. Opening up my hand using the pads of my fingers, starting down at my hip, coming straight up through the attacker's eyes. That's a possibility. We think that vulnerable targets on the attacker's body is some of the most important information to know. Let's take a look at somebody who isn't leaning down into us, but rather is standing with their legs slightly apart. Regardless of what type of personal body parts they have, I might take the piece of my wheelchair off if I have a manual chair where the arm comes out, and I might sweep it up. I might use my cane or my London fog umbrella or my rolling pin and smash up between the attacker's legs. I might use my hand. It looks like this. Ha! What I'm doing is making a straight hand, folding my thumb across my palm. My fingers look like they've been sewn together. Think if you were going to throw a ball across the room. It's an underhand serve motion. Think about looking up at the attacker's face for the element of surprise.
Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense. Participants interacted in a virtual space because this recording was made during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Lots of us as women have been told the most dangerous place for us to be is on the street or out in public. And while stranger harassment is an issue, all of us are more likely to have to physically defend ourselves against someone we know, and in particular, somebody that we have trusted or that we do trust. You know, the data shows for all of us that one of the most common ways for us to be assaulted by someone we know in our own home is to be strangled. And so Rachel and I are going to show you a couple of options of things that we can do, keeping in mind we never use strength against strength. We just assume the attacker is bigger and stronger than we are. Instead, what we're doing is using big body part against small body part. So let's take a look at this. This attack is when the hands are around our throat, thumbs are pushing in and up in our windpipe. Let's look at a one-armed release. Choke me, please.
Deb breaks free from her assistant's choke.
So what you're seeing me do is use my shoulder against the attacker's thumb. Let's do that in slow motion. I made a straight hand. I'm coming diagonally up and across my ear over my temple. That hand has been released. This hand is still holding on. You saw me with my upper hand, with my hand up high, going fold.
Deb makes a fist.
Wrap, squeeze. You saw me smash right down through the bridge of the attacker's nose. That's only if I can reach the nose. I might instead choose a different target. I might make the release and come right through the side of the attacker's knee. Now that causes permanent damage to the attacker. Joints tend to not heal back the way noses do, for example, or collarbones. The collarbone is the weakest bone in the human body. Many women watching this have double the amount of strength necessary to break a collarbone. So watch that release again.
Deb lifts her arm.
I'm coming directly up beside my ear over my temple, and then I'm going to come straight below the attacker's ear, causing mechanical failure. The arm drops with a broken collarbone. Will they die from that? No. They'll be fine in about 6 to 8 weeks, which might give me time to figure out what am I going to do next. So that's one way of releasing. Let me show you one more way. Can you put your hands on my throat, please? What I'm doing is opening up my hand like the letter C. I am going into the inside of the attacker's elbow, across on one side, across on the other side, and then counterattacking through the side of the neck or through the front of the throat. Side of the neck, carotid artery, carries blood up from the heart to the brain. When I hit somebody through the side of the neck, they might faint. They might get dizzy. If they're already a healthy person, they'll be fine. Notice the difference between when we break somebody's knee and we make somebody pass out or we give them a bloody nose. You know, we're choosing the physical technique according to how dangerous this situation is. One more time, please. So we're cupping our hands into the letter C, cross into inside elbow. I may not have to do a hit. I might be doing it. Don't touch me again. I might be able to use verbal self-defense. We don't know what the situation is going to be until we're in it. And so it's good for us to think verbal self-defense, physical technique, all tools that I might have in my toolbox.
A sign language interpreter signs throughout the video. Logo, Vibrant Healthcare Alliance.
Let's take a look at a situation where someone has grabbed our wrist. They're trying to yank me out of my chair, or they're trying to bully me, or take advantage of me in some way. May I touch your wrist, Rachel? What they're doing is grabbing my wrist with two hands. Their thumbs are on the upper part of my arm. I might start with verbal self-defense. I might be saying, honey, I am so sorry. I know I snapped at you. Listen, let's get a drink. Let's settle down here. I might continue verbal self-defense if I think that I am in no more danger than simply somebody trying to intimidate me with their arm, with their hands. But if in fact they are trying to pull me, or I think they're going to hurt me more, I might do a release. It looks like this.
Using her free hand, Deb pulls up on her other hand.
What I'm doing is using, just like we did with the choke release, I'm using big body part, my arm. I'm using it against their two thumbs, right here, coming up to one shoulder or coming up to the other one. Here's what you're never going to do when you're practicing this. You're never going to come into your face. Easy to give ourselves a bloody nose in that situation. Perhaps I work with just one side of my body. I can also do one side. I don't have to reinforce, but if I'm going to, never take your wrist and bend it back. Keep it nice and straight. Don't bend it back. Let's look at that release one more time. Hard, tight fist for double the strength, pulling up to one shoulder or pulling up to the other.
Depending on what kind of wheelchair you might be using, some people don't grab our arm. What some people do is they lean down and into our wrists, holding our wrists against the arms of the chair. And in that situation, just think, where is the attacker's thumb? It's on the inside of the arm, so that's the direction my arm is going to go in. What you're seeing me do is make a hard, tight fist, and it's as if I'm going to actually hit myself in the belly button. I'm coming right across and in. I might yell at this person, or I might counterattack through their ear, through their nose, through their temple, which can cause internal bleeding in the brain. Clearly, I'm going to choose a target that is going to give me appropriate time to get myself away.
Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense. Deb demonstrates from a sitting position. Her assistant Rachel stands, playing the role of attacker.
So women who come to Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense who do use wheelchairs, particularly manual wheelchairs, talk about how people that they've never seen in their lives before decide that they need to come up behind them and, here, let me help you cross the road, or who come up beside and, who see a wheelchair as something that actually they don't need to ask permission for touching. So we're going to talk about verbal self-defense and what we can do if somebody is, doing that kind of stuff. But let's escalate the situation for a moment. Let's take a look at a situation where someone has come up beside me. They put their arm around my shoulder. They may be pulling me into them. They might even, depending on the type of wheelchair I have, they might even be thinking about pulling me over onto my side. And so this is a situation where I might go into physical techniques right away. What we know is the genitals are a target. So is the abdomen around the area of the belly button. So is the solar plexus. Those are the three areas that I can reach really easily right now. I might start off then with an elbow strike. It looks like this. Ha! What I'm doing is sprouting a wing.
Elbow out.
Making a hard, tight fist. If it's possible for me, I'm going to cover that fist for double the strength. Like a battering ram, I'm coming across.
Pushing her elbow.
Through the attacker's abdomen. This can cause internal bleeding to the attacker. Without medical attention, they could suffer permanent damage and even death. So I might choose the abdomen, or I might just knock the wind out of them. Coming up and through the attacker's solar plexus. It will take them a few moments to get their breath back. Depending on the height of the attacker, depending on the height of my chair, I might come up between the attacker's legs as well. If I am using one side of my body, I might just make that hard, tight fist and I might open up my hand. If this person has male personal body parts, I might grab their testicles, squeeze, twist, rip. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can defend ourselves when somebody is beside us. What if I needed to follow up? What if I needed to follow up with a second strike? If I'm elbowing into the solar plexus, I might use the back of my fist up into their nose. That combination would look like this. So again, we're using our body the way it works right now. If you come and take a Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense class, we tailor the program according to who is in the room right now. I know so many women who have motorized wheelchairs, who have hit that joystick, and who have sliced with their footrest through the attacker's shin or through the knee, or who have run over in the attacker's foot. Using our voice should never be minimized, should never be underestimated. So if I can get Rachel to please just stand behind me, hold on to those imaginary handles on my wheelchair. I may want to use verbal self-defense in a public situation. I might, if somebody has grabbed the back of my chair, depending on my style, I might say, let go. Thanks anyhow. No thanks. Let go. Or I might be, let go! Or if they're not letting go, I might be, you in the red jacket, I'm being attacked by a stranger. Call 911. We have been told from the time that we were baby girls to not be too much, to not make a scene. And what we're suggesting in Wen-Do Women's Self-Defense is be too much trouble, make a scene. You do what your instinct and your gut feeling is telling you to do, and know that we have been programmed to stay quiet. I would say, again, that appears to be times 100 for women who are living with disability.
A search bar animates in over a white background. Inside is written Vibrant Healthcare Alliance. Caption: Empowering Independence, Health, and Well-Being Together. A hand-painted banner reads, WIDAG, Take Back the Night. Deb is joined by Lucy on the video call with Katie, Robin, and Stephanie.
So welcome back. We're going to spend a few minutes and talk about how some of societal attitudes, kind of infiltrate us as a women and inform sometimes how we see ourselves, how we see each other, but more importantly, how if someone is trying to take advantage of us, cross those boundaries with us, give me some examples, if you can, about how society and how people in positions of power or perceived power might be looking at all women and then women with disabilities.
Lucy.
So I know that for me, growing up as a female with a physical disability. And that really left me feeling like, oh, so my body is something for others to try to fix, which I didn't think needed fixing until society told me it needed to be fixed. And as a female, I always knew I wasn't looked upon as equal to a male.
Robin.
So one of the things that this happened more for me when I went from using a manual chair to a power wheelchair is that for me, my power wheelchair added to my independence. In a way, it also became an extension of my body. So what I mean by that is that, you know, when I was driving down the street and people would automatically go and help me, so they would automatically go and automatically touch my handlebars. And to me, my handlebars are like my shoulders. So when somebody would want to automatically touch my chair, I'd be like, don't touch my chair. That is like an extension of me. So, you know, you're putting your hand on my handlebar. It's like you're putting your hand on my shoulder or my arm. And I didn't give you permission to touch me. I don't like that. That's not cool. So, yeah.
Katie.
I experienced that a lot too, what Robin just discussed. Many years ago, I was at a shopping mall with an able-bodied friend. And somebody came up to me and gave me a compliment and said I was really pretty for somebody in a wheelchair. And that really stuck out to me as like, was it ableist? Or I was a little bit confused, like it took me back. And the friend that I was with was a little confused by it as well, because it was kind of a backhanded compliment. So I don't know why that sticks out to me. I've actually written like an article about it because it's something, it's like it happened to me yesterday.
So thank you. You know, Katie, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, when we talk about our personal experiences and how raw we can feel sometimes, even just, you know, sharing that kind of stuff. And I think that you are touching on the world of we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. So one of the things that all women have in common is if we don't take it as a compliment, then we're just overreacting to something. But if we let something slide and then that person escalates with us, well, you should learn to speak up for yourself, right? So we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. And I think you really captured that, Katie. So thank you. How about you, Steph?
I remember also when I was younger, I was at a mall with an able-bodied friend and also a friend who had a visible physical disability, who used a manual chair, and at the time, so did I. And we're in the mall, and I think we were waiting for the elevator or something, and somebody came up and started asking my able-bodied friend questions about me and my other friend who had a visible physical disability. And I was young, but I looked at the person and I started answering the questions, and it stunned the person, and they kind of jumped back and they were like, oh, you can communicate by yourself?
Yeah.
And I said yes, and I was just so upset because there's so many different ways to communicate. It doesn't just have to be your voice. I said to them, yes, I can communicate, so I'd appreciate if you could just ask me instead of my friends.
Yeah. And it also, you know, you made me think of another experience I've had, and I think many of us have had, is not being believed. Not being believed about our bodies, not being believed about our experience, not being believed about what we feel, right? And I remember, you know, again, as a child, was actually told, no, I don't believe that your foot bends inside your shoe. And it was as 11-year-old, it's like, okay, where do I go with this if you're not gonna bully me? Those are things that can really create, and foster something within us that feels like, okay, well, I just need to go through it until we define our inner strength, voice, and find people who do believe us, right, and respect us.
If I could just speak up about one more thing, I also find that as a woman with a visible physical disability, that you can't, like, people often don't take your opinions to heart, and they just kind of brush them off because they don't think that you are smart enough to have that opinion, or that your opinion doesn't matter. And I have had that experience numerous times throughout different parts of my life, and that also has hurt me in ways. So it's sometimes hard for me to speak up for myself sometimes throughout my life because of that.
I actually have a lot of people when I first meet them that assume that I'm not as smart or as intelligent as I actually am. People are sometimes shocked by certain conversations we have, and I ask them after, and they apologize because they went into the conversation assuming that maybe I'm not as intelligent as they expected.
So ableist assumptions, which is what you're talking about, include juvenilization, right? Yes. Dehumanization, right? And I know that y'all know
about how the crossover works, so if any of us have old people in our lives and we've ever gone to a doctor with one of our elders, right? Suddenly the doctor is talking to us and not to the older person that we're with. There's an assumption that cognitively that person isn't necessarily able to make decisions concerning their own body. That happens with kids as well, right? The data shows it happens more with women than it does with guys, right? And so the intersectional nature of oppression is really obvious. Remember I told you the story about a woman on one of my classes. She was taking a course for women who are low vision or blind. And she said that, every day here in Toronto, she takes the subway back and forth to work, same routine, same schedule. And one day a woman sat down beside her and said, "My dear, I see you every day. You always look so lovely. You just turned out so nicely. Tell me, who dresses you?" And that woman said to her without missing a beat, she said, "Well, it depends on who I spent the night with." So what my student was doing was not just addressing the assumption, the ableist assumption around personal care, being able to dress oneself, but also she threw in that other little piece about, and I have sex, and I have sex with as many people as I feel like having sex with, because that exactly I hear from women who live with disabilities is the assumption is, A, you should be grateful for any sex that's ever offered to you, or you're asexual. We know all the data shows that women with disabilities are far more likely to be hurt than non-disabled women. And so that's, you've created the base of understanding here, the assumptions that people make and the ownership that people feel that they are entitled to over all women's bodies, and then certainly for some women with disability. And so the shame and the blame that all of us as women internalize is what we want to debunk. What's the first thing you might want to say to your friend who is disclosing such an important thing to you? Robin.
That you're not alone. That's the one thing that I learned, especially at Wen-Do, coming into that room, that you're not alone.
Sisterhood. Sisterhood, baby. Sisterhood, right? And yet we are told
that it's just us. If the criminal code describes sexual assault as any unwanted sexual activity, right? Unwanted kissing, unwanted touching of our breasts, our genitals, or our butt, that is sexual assault.
Objectifying our bodies.
Right? More than 1 out of every 4 women in Canada has experienced that. If it has happened to you, then you are part of a majority, not a minority. And so if my friend comes to me to tell me that they've been hurt, I'm going to tell them, yeah, you're part of a majority. What else would you tell your friend if they were telling you that they had been hurt? Was that your hand, Katie?
Yeah, I think it's also very important to state that you believe them.
Yes.
Yeah.
spray paint it everywhere on every building that you go past. Spray paint. We believe survivors, right? I believe you, and it's not what? Your fault. It's not your fault. It doesn't matter whether you were drunk or stoned. It doesn't matter if you'd had consensual sex with that person 1,000,000 times. Doesn't matter. It's not your fault. It's never your fault if someone crosses the line. And then, of course, what we do with our friend depends on our friend. We ask our friend, what do you need? Who do you want to talk to? And, you know, maybe that's where all that big resource, that resource list of healthcare centers and rape crisis centers come into play. I think the most important aspect of any conversation we have about violence against women
is about finding compassion for ourselves. Just as we would find compassion for other people in our lives, we want to be able to transfer that to us. So when we talk about what does finding our power actually look like, I would like to suggest that what we're doing always when we find our power is we're taking our power back in a society that has worked systematically to take our power away.
Yeah, and reclaiming that back and finding that strength. That's in all of us. It's in all of us. All about finding it and discovering it, and for many of us, having the support to do that, right? Yeah.
Well said. Well said. So here's how we change the world. We take care of ourselves. We remove self-judgment. We get support when we need it. And if we can't find the right support, don't stop trying. Keep looking. Because we're worth it. We're worth fighting for in all kinds of ways.
Vibrant Healthcare Alliance. Mission: building healthier communities using integrated services to empower individuals living with complex issues.
So hi everyone.
On a different video call,
We are continuing our discussion. So thinking back to a couple of weeks ago, we talked a bit about messages that we received when growing up, as we were getting older, and how those impacted us. It can be challenging when we live in an environment where disability is what I believe as a part of life. For me, anyway, it's who I am. It's always been who I am, right?
It's a lifestyle, yeah.
Exactly. And it can be challenging when society doesn't view it that way, right?
Some experience I've had with kind of privacy invasion situations. Actually, most recently, within the last month or so, I had an attendant assist me with transferring to use the washroom. And then I politely asked her to give me some privacy, and she laughed at me. So that made me feel like my privacy wasn't important to her. It was kind of a joke. So I came out and asked her, I said, is my asking for privacy, is that funny to you? Like, explain how or why that's funny to you. And she didn't even answer the question. So
I've experienced things of like when it comes to my privacy, well, two things. One, having my attendants confuse or blur the lines between where they work and my home. And the other one, especially when I've had to go to hospital, because I'm there and because I have a disability, it's like my dignity goes away. Like an example of what I mean is, I remember I was going through something and I was in the hospital for a couple of days, and I was put in a room without a door.
Robin.
And one of the things that when I was feeling stronger to say something, they're like, oh, because you have a disability, we need to access you. I said, so you're not giving me a door so I could actually have privacy when I need to close the door to go to the bathroom, because it's easier for you guys to access me and do what you need. So you're making things easier for you and not for me. So I don't feel like my dignity is being respected.
Lucy.
You would think that in the hospital they would get it, and they don't get it at all. And many times those experiences themselves can lead to trauma.
Another example that I've encountered many times is when a personal support worker will just use a key and just walk into your apartment.
Stephanie.
They won't knock. Sometimes they come late, sometimes they come early, and they just think they can do whatever, whenever, and they don't realize that you don't want that. You want your privacy. It's your home. It's and they do, like Robin said, they do blur the lines of their workplace, your home. And multiple times I've had this conversation with people, and it's like it just goes to the wayside for them. They don't care, or they get agitated with you because you've spoken up about it.
I have the same situation as well, because my apartment happens to be across the hall from the staff room.
Katie.
So when I have tenants here and they need to pass along a message to another staff member, they just walk into my house without knocking. That's something that irritates me to no end. Like, I get so mad about it, and it just seems like it's brushed away. Like, they don't even consider it.
And that is so disrespectful.
It happened just this morning, actually. Yeah.
It reminds me of the Aretha Franklin, RESPCT, right? Respect. And it's almost like, this is what it means to me.
The lady that was helping me this morning, I'd asked her for a few minutes of privacy. And then I heard her, she had my door open, and she was having a conversation with a coworker outside my door, just like casually with the door open, having a conversation with somebody.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. I appreciate the acknowledgement of that, because I feel like sometimes I'm invisible when I feel that way. So.
You're not alone there.
Yeah. And another thing I want to bring up about privacy and PSWs is the fact that like whatever goes on in your home sometimes travels outside your home and down to the like PSW's office or and it manifests in, it's like broken telephone, and then the next person comes up and goes, oh, and then says whatever, and you're like, oh, where'd you hear that? It's a violation of people's privacy when your personal stuff goes down to somewhere else and then turns into something that it's really not. Like I've actually had that happen where things got misconstrued and you're like, no, that's not what's happening, but thanks for letting me know that you think that.
When it comes to other parts of privacy in regards to, so you know, I live in supportive housing, I'm on ODSP, I'm on Wheel-Trans, I have doctors. So when they fill out forms, my life financially is kind of like an open book. So that's where I don't feel I have privacy. And people are like, well, okay, well, you have ODSP and you need this, so you have to like let me know you're on ODSP and how much you make. And it's frustrating because it's just like, okay, like that's another thing is that that's when I hear from other people, well, if you don't have this and you need it, you know, you have to, you know, be good, like, you know, don't rock the boat kind of thing. And I'm just like, well, you know, if you're telling me I need something and it's not exactly what I need and it's gonna be good for you but not for me, I'm gonna say something, because yeah, you may think I'm getting it for free, but the thing is I have to use it.
What about social media?
The one thing that I say to everybody, especially if it's a young person coming to me, is be very careful what you post, because once it's out there forever.
Mm-hmm.
So something that you may post last year will come back, you will see it again in time. So it's once it's out there, it's out there. So if you don't want to say this comment, or you don't want to put this on Facebook because you're afraid of who might see it, I would really think long and hard about if you really want to post it, because once it's on there, it's there. And it maybe goes off your news feed, but it's on the internet forever.
So Robin, I got a quote here from you. That quote was, "This is where I get my power."
Yes.
Like, that's an amazing quote.
When I'm around people and they are just learning how to find their voices, so especially with like something like Wen-Do, if something doesn't feel right, follow your body, like listen to your body. If you're in a room and somebody's looking at you too much, or you're wheeling or walking down the street and that person behind you is getting a little bit too close, your body is telling you this doesn't feel right. So that would be my words of wisdom, is your body tells you what it needs to know.
Yeah, I actually had an inclination a couple nights ago of a man behind me, and I didn't feel good about it. And I automatically sped up in my wheelchair and lost him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just an automatic response, I think.
Trust yourself. That's my final quote.
Yeah.
And that goes to recognizing your own strength, right? Inner strength, and honoring and trusting that. Right? Thank you all so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The participants smile and wave before signing off of the video call. Caption: Special thanks. Vibrant Healthcare Alliance, staff. Peer Support Coordinator Lucy Nyman. Project Manager Ruth Ennis. Y-Daggett Peer Mentor Script Contributors Video Participants Stephanie Greco and Robin Simmons. Y-Daggett Peer Mentor Script Contributor Melissa Simas. Y Daggett member, video participants, Katie McMillan. Wen-Do Women Self-Defense, staff. Senior trainer with Wen-Do Women Self-Defense, Deborah Chard. Volunteer with Wen-Do Women Self-Defense, Rachel Walker. The search bar animates in with the words Vibrant Healthcare Alliance. Logo, Vibrant Healthcare Alliance, empowering independence, health, and well-being together.